Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Dawn, and what are you doing?
Just looking at my hair. My baldness. It really magnifies in the video.
Oh my gosh. This channel is Dawn Does Keto. This channel is all about my accountability and my personal journey on the ketogenic diet. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do a segment called Dinner with Dawn.
And Bald Mike. Wow. I wish this was Dawn Does Keto and hair extensions or something, because I need something. Look at that. Don't look at that.
We are currently in the process of reading the book, The Case Against Sugar by Gary Taubes, and we will jump into the book after we show you what we're having, which is super simple tonight. Just burgers with bacon and cheese.
Yeah, bacon cheeseburgers. And I don't know if we're going to jump into the book. We might just like step down gradually, because that's the kind of day we've been having. So let's just keep it simple.
We've had a little bit of a rough day. It's 8:30.
Oh, we're early.
Yeah, and of course Mike still has to go over and help his mom and dad tonight. We just have had like a lot of stress today.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can see all my hair's falling out and it's turning gray.
So you know that we help Mike's mom and dad a couple of days a week, actually almost every day, but we do have a few days off that we had help, and we found out today that for the unforeseeable future, we are not going to have that help. So it's literally on us to go over there 3 to 4 times a day, 7 days a week, and help with his dad. So that was a little bit of a stressor today. I also had a friend who lost her son. We're not really sure what happened. He was only 42 years old.
I thought he was 46.
I think he was 42.
42. That makes it even...
Yeah. So we had to go to calling hours today for that. We had our granddaughter, one of our granddaughters, for a few hours tonight. We were helping watch her. So it's just been a lot today.
Oh, did we mention we still haven't gotten our taxes done yet?
Yeah.
Those are sitting here looking at us from across the table saying, please get me done.
Yeah. So it has been an exceptionally stressful day, and we have so much to do, and we're just not getting any of it done. I am going to use some of this mango jalapeno Primal Kitchen barbecue sauce on my burgers because I like that. Mike does not.
I use Primal Kitchen steak sauce on mine.
Yeah. Did you put some on there?
I put mine on while it's on the grill. It warms it up, cooks on it a little bit.
I don't care if mine's cold.
Yeah, I'm really specific about that. I just don't care for cold. You know, back in the day when we would eat, at an Italian restaurant or any restaurant where you can get mozzarella sticks, which I like, and we make them keto now, but when you have that marinara sauce, it's got to be warmed up. I can't stand cold. I don't understand why they think that's okay. I don't want cold sauce. I want it warm. But anyway, I digress.
And while we were cooking the bacon, part of our bacon got really kind of burnt. I needed the bacon for my cauliflower casserole that I'm making for Easter. So I'm hoping that it doesn't make my whole casserole taste like burnt bacon.
I'll eat it anyway because it's good.
So did you have anything for lunch today?
So we haven't really had anything to eat for dinner per se. And we did have the bacon wrapped Teton hot dogs the other day, but I took those for lunch the day after. That was yesterday. Today, last night we really didn't eat anything that we had leftovers for. And so I just packed.
I had spicy sausage, but Mike said it was too spicy.
Oh my gosh,
he didn't eat any of it.
It looked so good, and I cooked it all up, and I thought, we can have this, and some bacon, leftover bacon we had, I cooked up. I took one bite. My mouth was on fire. I was like breathing fire like a dragon.
I thought it was delicious.
She ate the whole thing. And that's fine because I wasn't going to eat it, but we didn't want it to go to waste. So anyway, I didn't have anything to take really, so I just took beef stick, some cheese, some pork rinds. I had some keto cookies, and basically that was my lunch. I didn't even hardly drink any water today. I kept leaving my cup all around different spots at work, so by the end of the day, I didn't drink any water.
Mike is also eating some high-low chips, so if you hear that crunching, the bacon's crispy, but you
not that crispy. Well, it might be, but not ours.
I did have 2 of the Teton bacon wrapped sausages for lunch today.
I saw that they were gone.
And some cheese. That was my lunch today. Mike is off tomorrow, though. That's pretty exciting. Good Friday is one of their paid holidays, so hopefully we can get caught up on some things.
Yeah, oddly enough, it's the first time in my work life that I get Good Friday off paid. I don't recall ever having Good Friday off at any other previous employer. But when I worked at Coke, the last 5 years I was at Coke, I worked 4 10-hour shifts. I was off on Friday anyway. So we got it off. But this time I get it off with pay. So it's nice.
So what's on our agenda for tomorrow? I have an eye doctor's appointment. So something I don't know that I've really talked about too much on my channel, or maybe not at all, but I have a degenerative eye disease called lattice degeneration. And what it is that it's a thinning of the retinal tissue. And sometimes people will get it in one eye. Sometimes they'll get it in another eye. So this is your eye. You might get it just in one little spot. Well, my eyes, I have it in both eyes, and I have it 360 degrees. It goes completely around my entire retina, and it's thinned out, and I've already got 4 holes in my left retina. I don't think I have any in the right. I don't recall.
Not as of your last appointment.
Yeah. I'm at a high risk for a retinal detachment and at some point in my life possibly going blind. So I was going every 6 months and having the progression of the disease like kind of checked. But over the last couple years, it has been stable. Like it's stayed the same. It hasn't changed. So he's been having me come once a year.
Right.
Well, that appointment is tomorrow. And I hate this appointment. They numb my eyes, they dilate my eyes, and they do all kinds of testing on it. And usually by the time I leave there, I have a headache and my eyes hurt. And
yeah.
So Mike has to drive me. Well, I completely forgot I had this appointment, and it just so happened he had the day off.
It just so happened that you did it on Good Friday.
Yeah,
of all times.
It's almost always in April. The appointment's always in April. And I didn't realize it was Good Friday when I made the appointment. They called to verify it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have this on my calendar.
Well, I think you made the appointment on Friday because I was off on Friday anyway.
Fridays, yeah.
So that part of it made sense.
When I booked it, you were still at Coke,
You just got lucky that it happened to be on Good Friday that I get off anyway. Otherwise, I probably would have had to take the day off, which would have been fine.
His employer's really good about that. If he needed to leave, if he would have just had to leave to take me, they would have been fine with that too. So anyway, that appointment is tomorrow. And I don't know off the top of my head what else we have going on tomorrow.
I mean, I don't have an itinerary or anything, but we do have to work on our taxes. We do need to try to get those done. Tomorrow would be a good day to do that because we may not have a ton of things to do. Typical stuff, things around the house that probably need addressed. If we get some time, maybe we could work a little bit more in the office that we're trying to renovate that we've started like a month ago and haven't done anything.
We started it, we got the closet done, and then just
hit a wall.
Well, we've just had so much going on. We haven't had any free time. So I got to get Easter stuff ready for Sunday. I got food that needs to be prepared ahead of time.
I do need to get my tires rotated and an oil change in the truck because that has to be done before we start camping.
Yeah, so our first camping trip is next weekend. So Saturday, our plan on Saturday is to go to our camper and start. We haven't camped in it yet. We've been buying stuff for it, but it's not set up. So our plan on Saturday is to go and actually get everything set up in the camper.
We're going to need to open it up, and we're going to need to flush out the lines, get all the antifreeze out of there so that it's ready to rock and roll next weekend.
If we do get the camper all set up, I would really like to do a tour for you guys, and I can include that on my video on Monday, just to show you like what our camper looks like and so you guys can see it. Just because that's going to be a huge part of our lives and traveling this summer. And we are going to be doing vlogging and different things. We're going to Utah, and we're going to be going to Keto Chow and Redmond Real Salt, and we're going to be vlogging a lot of that, and we'll be in our camper. So I thought it would be nice ahead of time to just show you guys the layout and how it's set up and everything. I just ate 2 hamburgers in the same time it took Mike to eat 1. I'm done.
She's completely done. And I still have a whole burger. And that is not uncommon. She's a vacuum cleaner, and I am not. I don't know how she does it. And her and my son, our son, are exactly the same. They literally can eat a hamburger in like 3 bites. We've
talked about it before, and I know I eat too fast.
I cannot eat that fast. I like to chew my food. I like to taste it. I like to swallow.
Especially when I'm hungry. If I'm really hungry, all bets are off.
You guys have noticed, if you've been watching us for a while, and when we do our dinner with Dawn and Mike and we eat, you've noticed I chew a long time. I like to make sure I'm not swallowing. I don't really
show all the chewing.
Well, if you haven't seen it, blame her. She should show you all the chewing. I chew a lot.
I edit the chewing out. I try to edit a lot of that out because...
So it's probably time for story time now.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, we're finishing up chapter 9, I believe it is.
Yes.
Second half. Second half of this chapter what we call the second half. We found a stopping point and a starting point. That's what we called halfway. But we're going to get into the glycemic index, which is fantastic because this thing changed everything.
This chapter talks about the glycemic index, it talks about insulin resistance, and it talks about metabolic disease a lot. That's what the whole second half of this chapter is about.
Yeah, it really focuses on that specific area.
Right.
But I say that about the glycemic index because, as you're going to find out, it was developed and it was resisted for a long time, but over a period of time, they being the medical community, have come to accept the glycemic index. There's a part about this that it just made my eyes just roll, because despite the fact that the glycemic index now gives us a gauge of how different sugars and different foods, how it affects your insulin response, the sugar industry managed to twist it, take the information off of this index, twist it to make it still promote
to make sugar still seem like it was good.
Yes,
yeah.
It's just so amazing.
The glycemic index goes from 0 to 100. So regular table sugar is 65 on the glycemic index. Pure glucose is 100 on the glycemic index, and fructose is 25. So sucrose, which is a combination of those two, falls at 65. The big issue that they had with the glycemic index in the beginning was that foods that had higher fats were falling lower on the glycemic index, and they were all about high fat food being bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to turn around and say, well, this is lower on the glycemic index and it's a high fat food, they weren't happy about that.
No, they
didn't want it to be low on the glycemic index if it was high fat.
But again, over time, they came to accept it because you had to. It was a factual statement.
Right.
They had to accept it. And they did. She's going to tell you. They still use it as a twist.
Right. So with fructose being 25, they were saying that was an ideal sweetener then for diabetics.
Mm-hmm.
They said there's no reason, therefore, for diabetics to be denied foods containing sucrose. So just to switch gears for a little bit, in 1999, the amount of sugar being sold per person in the United States for every man, woman, and child in the country was 150 pounds. And what they're saying is that amount was 2 to 3 times higher than what the FDA had initially defined as safe. Remember, we talked before about sugar being on the GRAS list and being
generally regarded as safe.
Right. At that time, the amount of sugar that people were eating were 2 to 3 times less than what they were eating in 1999. The amount of sugar that each man, woman, and child was eating had basically tripled.
Mm-hmm.
They still didn't take it off of the list, though. And they said here that there were multiple possible explanations for why this happened. It included the fact that the public health authorities were now telling everybody that they were demonizing fat.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying that fat is what makes people fat, and they implied that sugar was effectively harmless.
Right.
So
all because of that glycemic index rating. That's why.
Yeah. So people came back and cut back their fat, and when you cut back fat, that typically increases the sugar. We've talked about this before. When you're eating a low-fat ranch dressing, that low-fat ranch dressing has more sugar in it than the regular ranch dressing because they're trying to make the taste better. Once you take the fat out, the taste isn't as good, so they have to add more sugar to it. By doing this, you're increasing the amount of sugar that everyone's eating because everyone's trying to eat lower fat. So that implication that fat made you fat increased the amount of sugar that every man, woman, and child was eating. The other reason that they think, again, they were saying there were multiple reasons why the increase had jumped so high in the amount of sugar that everyone was consuming. The other one was that the American Heart Association was starting to recommend people have sugar candies for snacks rather than foods that contain saturated fats. They're literally telling people to eat sugar. And that's coming from the American Heart Association.
Technically it was in the 20th century, but yeah. Unbelievable.
So getting back to this whole that fructose is only 25 on the glycemic index, they referred to their product as fructose. They also referred to fructose as fruit sugar, which gave it a healthy connotation in the public's eye.
Look, that's the same thing that they did with demonizing fat. Fat just sounds bad.
Yeah.
And so you take that, and then of course you might show up a chunk of fat, which doesn't necessarily look appetizing, but then they turn around and make fruit. And of course, you've seen the commercials for fruit, and it's glistening, and They have water around it. It's fresh. They portray it as being healthy. And I mean, they just played with the public's mind.
The fructose then became fruit sugar, which seemed inherently healthy. And it says the American Diabetes Association and diabetic specialists were now suggesting that fructose is an ideal sweetener on the basis that it doesn't raise blood sugar or require insulin to be metabolized. This made high fructose corn syrup seem ideal as well. So now we're going to start talking about high fructose corn syrup because it's just another form of sugar. But they made it seem like it was not as bad. They started putting it in all kinds of bottled drinks, Gatorades, all kinds of manufactured products. The manufacturers would acknowledge in the list of ingredients right at the top that the primary source of the calories came from high fructose corn syrup. But that did not alter the consumer's thoughts. It says that the manufacturers could acknowledge in the list of ingredients that the primary source of calories came from high fructose corn syrup without altering consumers'
without alerting consumers that this was another form of sugar.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before too. There are so many different kind of sweeteners now, and there's so many different names that they throw those in there. Even though they're not good for you, they're high on the list.
But they had everyone convinced that it was a healthy sugar.
Right. You read that instead of reading sugar.
They would put it right on the label, made with high fructose corn syrup, because it sounded good because people thought that it was a better substitute than having straight
and
sugar.
the soft drink industry, and I know this because I used to work for Coca-Cola, the soft drink industry embraced this because not only did it give you the illusion that it was better for you, but it came in liquid form, which for a beverage is perfect, right? You can just squirt some in there, and it was very inexpensive.
Yeah, that was the other thing. It was a lot cheaper.
And so, coming from that industry, I can tell you, and I don't know how often because I didn't really deal with it directly, but we would get 4 tanker trucks. Not trucks, but rail cars. 4 tanker rail cars full of high fructose corn syrup.
How often was that? I think we
I
talked
don't
about
know
this
how
before.
often it was, but all I know is that's a lot of corn syrup.
Yeah.
That's a ton.
So in the late 1980s, biochemistry of how our liver metabolizes fructose had been worked out. They were starting to figure out this is basically sugar, and the sugar consumption will elevate your triglycerides when it's in your bloodstream. The medical research community came to recognize that insulin resistance and the condition known as metabolic syndrome, which is what we talked about, metabolic disease, is a major, if not the major risk factor for heart disease and diabetics. You get insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome before you get heart disease and diabetes. It first manifests itself as metabolic syndrome.
Right.
So the CDC now estimates that some 75 million adult Americans have metabolic syndrome. And the very first symptom they say is an expanding waistline, which means that if you're overweight or obese, which is two-thirds
of America,
of the American adults, there's a good chance you already have metabolic syndrome. And it means that your blood pressure is likely elevated and you're glucose intolerant and thus on the way to becoming diabetic.
Yep. All the medical research, all the modern technologies, the constant studying, because even though so many doctors got on board with this, they were shaming fat and promoting sugar, there were still doctors out there that were doing research and they just kept at it. And now we're seeing in the late 80s and early 90s and then throughout the 90s into the 2000s, we're seeing the fruit of their labor because now the truth is coming out. And it took a long time, but they've got the information now.
So in 1987, the emerging science of metabolic syndrome was discussed at a conference on diabetes prevention hosted by the National Institute of Health. The researchers and clinicians in attendance acknowledged that the science was compelling, that sugar played a part in metabolic syndrome.
Right, but listen to what one of the doctors said. This is crazy.
We kind of think that carbohydrates and sugar could have something to do with it, but they had already demonized fat. At that point, fat was believed to be bad for your heart, and that too much protein put an unhealthy strain on your kidneys.
Your kidneys, right.
So if you're not eating carbohydrates because it causes metabolic syndrome, and we're telling you can't eat fat because fat makes you fat, and you can't eat protein because protein causes kidney disease, what's left to eat?
Right.
Those are the 3 macronutrients. So they couldn't admit that sugar and carbohydrates were a problem because they were already saying that fat and protein were a problem.
But yet they had the proof that the carbohydrates and the sugars were the problem. So they they were stuck. They got backed into a corner and they could not do anything. They were like sticking their feet in their mouth. And they made a comment. This is why they made this comment. The administrator of the National Institute of Health at this time said they wished that it would go away because nobody knows how to deal with it.
Yeah, he said we have to eat something.
Right. They were so beside themselves that they were just making stupid comments. Well, I just wish it would just disappear.
Right.
Wiggle our nose. I can't wiggle my nose. Let's just make it disappear.
Right.
Because they got nailed. I mean, they were convicted right there. If this was a court case, folks,
right,
as we talked about, we are now getting down to
they're
crunch
literally
time.
saying now, oh, you can't eat anything. You can't eat fat, you can't eat carbs, you can't eat protein. Where are we? What are we going to do? So the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was just the fact that they talk about how metabolic syndrome changed the vocabulary for physicians about heart disease when they discuss the risk of heart disease with patients. Because now they're saying high cholesterol isn't among the cluster of metabolic abnormalities, nor elevated LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. Rather, the key factors are high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, high blood pressure, overweight, glucose intolerance, and more than anything, the condition of being insulin resistant and thus over-secreting insulin day in and day out. So this whole notion, and we've talked about this, we have people who are so worried about if I eat fat, my cholesterol is going to go up. It's not your cholesterol that you need to be worried about. It's all these other things that they're listing here that contribute to heart disease. And that science is starting to come out more and more.
Just the other day at work, I didn't tell you this, forgot to tell you this because it wasn't a big deal. We were talking to me and a couple of the guys in my department were discussing diet and just food in general. I made a comment, and I wish I could tell you exactly what I said, but I can't remember. One gentleman looked at me and he says, "How's your cholesterol?" And I said, actually, we don't have time to get into that, but it has nothing to do with cholesterol. It has nothing to do with it at all. And he just kind of looked at me because he's one of the guys, he's older than me, and he's one of those guys that's been told this, been fed this load of garbage, and he still thinks that that's what it is. It clearly is not. I wanted to mention to him about your sister. I work with my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, Dawn's sister. She's interviewed her for this channel.
Yeah,
so
and just real quick, the cliff notes, in case you haven't seen that video, because we have a lot of new subscribers. My sister started keto, and 10 months after she started keto, she was down probably about 65 pounds she had lost, and she then had a heart attack. And of course, she starts second guessing, thinking that eating all this fat and everything caused her heart attack. And her doctor told her, no, you losing that weight and this lifestyle actually saved your life. He thinks that if she had not lost the weight, that she would not have survived the heart attack. He said that the heart attack was from years and years of eating, not the way she'd been eating the last 10 months, but the stuff she had been eating for years and years, all the sugar and carbs and everything that.
She was like the poster child for carbs and sugar. So
because my sister didn't eat meat or eggs,
she ate pasta and drank a ton of carbonated beverages.
Yeah, she ate pasta every day. So just for anybody who's new to the channel and you don't know that, actually I'll link it up here, the interview with my sister, if you'd like to go back and watch that, and she talks about it. But it's just crazy because people are still so concerned, like if I eat high fat, my cholesterol is going to go up and then I'm going to have a heart attack. You know, we're definitely finding that that's not what causes heart disease. You know, sugar has gotten off the hook for way too long.
And my point of bringing that up was I wish I had thought of that at the time, because I would have said, look, you can go talk to Bob and Bob will tell you. And you could talk to me too, but Bob will tell you that her numbers, and we looked at her triglycerides.
Yeah, they dropped dramatically.
They dropped significantly. I
think I talked about that in another video too, where she had given me her numbers and her remnant cholesterol dropped dramatically. Her triglycerides dropped dramatically. I mean, it was crazy.
No, it was unbelievable because, you know, now you have your My chart or whatever, and they can send it to you right on your phone.
Yeah, so she sent it to me and she was like, okay, I got my new numbers. What does this mean?
Well, they were all in the red the first time and they were all in the green. All but one, I think, was in the green. And they were all in the normal range because I remember you guys looked it up.
And even that, even if your cholesterol is a little bit high, they're finding that more and more people that have heart attacks are actually people who have low cholesterol. Not the people with high cholesterol.
Right.
So even if your numbers say that you have high cholesterol, it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean it's really high. It just means it's higher than what it was.
We've been eating fat and animal products since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And that's why Dr. Berry calls this the proper human diet. because this is what our ancestors have been eating. So all of a sudden to come out and say, oh, we shouldn't eat that anymore, it's just wrong. So
and those statements and those comments are in direct relation to the significant increase in heart disease and diabetes and obesity. And it's just, again, we've talked about trends and we've talked about the charts, and everything goes up together. You don't have heart disease go up but obesity go down. It just doesn't work like that.
Right.
I mean, there's always those rare situations.
Right. And they use that example, and they used it again in this chapter, where not everybody who smokes is going to get lung cancer. And it's the same with sugar. Not everyone who eats sugar is going to get heart disease or become overweight or get diabetes and
metabolic syndrome.
Metabolic syndrome. Yeah. Sorry, I just had a brain freeze. It's more than likely that you will. Right. I mean, you can see the numbers that 2/3 of the American adult population is overweight. I think that's about it.
I mean, that's that part of the chapter. That's what it's all about. I mean, there's some other little bits of information in there. If you have the book, obviously you read it. We talked about it at the beginning of the book and the building the case, and the case is being built, and now there's so much rock solid evidence that, I mean, it's almost like a jury could never not convict at this point.
Right. If this went to trial, all this evidence, it boggles my mind that people still refuse to see the truth. Yeah.
And they also made a comment in the second half of this chapter too about the whole calorie is a calorie theory again, because even today people still buy into that. Yeah. I still hear people talk about calories. In fact, that might have been part of the conversation that I had at work. One of the guys made a comment about eating so many calories, and I was biting my tongue because I'm like, you don't understand that.
Yeah,
it has its place, but it's not.
You don't have hours to stand there and talk with them,
Well, and the problem is I mean, this information is wonderful, and I'm so glad that we're reading this book, and we've listened to Dr. Barry, and we've talked to other people, and we've talked to people that have experienced some of these great health benefits, but I can't remember all that stuff.
Yeah,
I can't remember it all. And
I just listened to a live stream that Ready Set Keto did last week. Tonight is actually their live stream on Thursday nights, and this was their live stream from last week. And semi-retired Bob was there. Emily had to work late, so semi-retired Bob, and I've listened to his story before, but I just love hearing it again. He's lost 145 pounds. He's carnivore, but he's lost 145 pounds. He couldn't even walk from his mailbox to his house, and now he walks 6 miles a day. It's unbelievable. He had fatty liver, he had diabetes, he had arthritis, he had so many health issues, and they're all basically gone.
And how old is he?
He's in his 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe he's in his 60s. Every time I hear his story, it just boggles my mind to see him. He weighs 175 pounds now. Like, it's crazy.
No, it's amazing. And the other part of that that's amazing is his age.
Yeah, and he wants to hike the Appalachian Trail. That's his goal. And so he keeps upping how far he's walking. And he literally went from not being able to walk to his mailbox to averaging 6 miles a day. And one day he did 15 miles or something. At his age. And it's just to hear all of his health issues and his chronic diseases. I mean, he was discharged, I believe, from the military because of gout.
That's another thing they mentioned in here too. Lactic acid that develops in the bloodstream, all these elevated numbers. That's a sure sign also of other health issues.
Right. I mean, the list for him was extensive, and they've all been reversed. Oh, yeah. Everything. So every time I hear his story, it just boggles my mind. And he talked about it again on their live stream, and it was just like, how can people? We have so many testimonies. It's
right.
Just,
that's the one thing that you can usually count on to change people's hearts. Not everybody. Getting in arguments with people and beating them over the head with numbers, that's not going to do it. Demonstrating daily, the lifestyle and eating properly, because we've seen it. We've had people come up to us. What's going on? We had our neighbors come up to us, and they live right across the street. We used to see them all the time, but our kids, are older now, and we don't see them as much.
Yeah, and we don't see them much in the wintertime because we're all hunkered down in our houses, right. So we don't see them too much. So after a long winter, we saw them like in the spring.
Yeah, they're
I
like,
think
hey,
this was last year, wasn't it?
Is there something wrong with you guys? What's going on?
Sick?
I mean, they were legitimately concerned, and they were right up front about it because, that's how we are with them. They're like, are you guys okay? Are you guys having health issues or something? I'm like, no, we just changed our diet and we're eating healthy. And they've never asked us another question again. Because unfortunately...
But yeah, I mean, the testimonies, and we hear them all the time in this keto community. The testimonies, I think, carry so much weight.
Yeah. Did you mean to say that?
I did not.
That's pretty funny.
They do go a long way, even more so than doctors arguing back and forth. This is good for you. That's good for you. To actually see people and see their diabetes be reversed, see their fatty liver go away. I believe semi-retired Bob had like kidney disease too. Like, I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah. He is one of the exceptional examples. You probably don't get those kind of results in every single person.
Yeah.
And maybe not everybody has as many ailments as he had, but he's definitely like that really exceptional example.
Semi-retired Bob also has his own YouTube channel. So of course you can always just go straight to his YouTube channel. Actually, I will link his channel if I can. I'll link it in the description below. So definitely go check out his channel because he's definitely an inspiration. If you go back to where he began to now, because he recorded himself. It was his first video was 3 minutes long, and it was him literally walking from his house to his mailbox. You can see in his channel the progression of him getting better. Anyway, that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a happy Easter.
Oh yes, happy Easter to all of you.
Yeah, we have a lot to do over the next couple of days, and then hopefully Easter Sunday we can maybe just relax a little bit.
We'll see.
You guys all have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.